Hello everyone and welcome to EduQuest. Today we'll be talking briefly about SAT and I'll be giving you the introduction of specifically the verbal section related to SAT. So let me just give you a brief introduction first. SAT is a standardized test administered by the College Board and is required to be taken by students seeking admission in undergrad schools. SAT exam has been developed to evaluate the written, verbal, and mathematical skills of the candidates. So now that we have touched a little on what SAT basically is, which I'm sure all of you appearing for SAT already know, let's have a look at the sections that SAT deals with. So the first section is evidence-based reading and writing, in which we have the reading section, which has the duration of 65 minutes and has 52 questions. Then we have the writing and the language section, which has 35 minutes and 44 questions. Then, since we are talking specifically about the verbal section today, I'll just pay attention to the verbal section. We also have an optional essay section, which is for 50 minutes, and you're required to write one essay in that time. Let's have a look at the reading section first. So today in this class, I'll be touching briefly on all the sections specifically dealing with the verbal section. So the first section is the reading section, which I just mentioned has 52 questions and you have 65 minutes for it. It contains 4 single passages and 1 set of paired passage for a total of 3,250 words. Each single passage or paired passage will be about 500 to 750 words long. So you have to manage your time accordingly. One passage will come from US or world literature, and the 2 passages will come from natural sciences, which means earth science, biology, chemistry, and physics. 2 passages will come from the social sciences, meaning anthropology, communications, arts, economics, education, human geography, history, legal studies, political science, sociology, psychology. But it is important to be noted that all these passages judge you basically on your reading skills, on your analysis skills, and how you're able to go about understanding the argument that is presented in the text that has been given to you, and how you're able to analyze the central theme, how you're able to analyze the tone, the purpose of the passage. So it does matter what particular subject the comprehension passage deals with, but more importantly, you have to look at it from point of view of analyzing the text. All right. So I like to divide the reading section and I like to discuss it in class on the basis of the types of questions. So the first type of question and the most important type of question is the question dealing with the main idea or the central theme. Being self-explanatory, it kind of tests your ability to find the central thought of the passage or to judge its significance. Just to give you a few keywords that generally, these questions contain. Those keywords are: the main point of the passage is to, the passage is primarily concerned with, the author's primary purpose in this passage is to. So these are a few keywords which help you understand that this particular question in the reading section deals with the main idea question. Then we have the specific details questions. The specific details questions basically enable your understanding of details in the passage. So they might refer to a particular line, and they also test your ability to understand what the author explicitly words in the passage, so in detail. So the keywords to understand this particular type of question would be: the author states all of the following except. So this kind of understands you to be a little alert while answering the question. According to the passage, which of the following is true? According to the passage, the chief characteristic of the subject is which of the following statements? Which of the following is not cited in the passage as evidence of? So these are the few keywords that help you analyze that the question is asking you for specific details. Then we have the inference-based questions. What basically you mean by inference-based questions is that they ask you to go beyond the text. They ask you to infer something out of the text, to kind of conclude, to make your own conclusions. The keywords are, it can be inferred from the passage that the passage suggests that the author would support which of the following views. Inference questions are very common in paired passages because paired passages kind of analyze two different passages. So that's something to be kept in mind. Basically, inference questions test your understanding of the text. So how you can kind of detach from the argument and infer what the author is trying to say. Then we have another important category, which is the tone or attitude related questions. So these questions help kind of judge on your understanding of the tone that is presented in the passage. Is the tone didactic, meaning is it trying to impose something on you? Is the tone very kind of informal? Is it trying to include the reader into the discussion? Is the tone serious? Is the tone very tentative, as in doubtful? Is it questioning a particular phenomena? All these things have to be kept in mind. So the tone and attitude of the author are actually very closely related. The attitude of the author towards the subject is projected through the tone that he takes up while writing the passage. The tone also directly relates to the use of words, which we will further discuss. So talking about the vocabulary and the words, we come to the next important category of questions, which is the vocabulary in context. Now it's to be kept in mind, since it is the reading section and it is kind of testing you on analyzing the particular passage. Vocabulary in context is something that judges you on understanding the use of the word in the context of the particular passage. So the functional meaning, the everyday meaning of the word could be different, and the meaning of the word in the context of the passage can be completely different. So this vocabulary in context not just judges you on understanding of words, it also judges you on how you can relate those words to the central theme or the argument that is going on in the reading section. So something I really like to do is try to make my students adept, really skilled at analysis. So that's something which, once you understand analysis, once you understand how to handle, how to go about a particular passage, how to kind of decipher your argument, your central theme, your attitude, then all these things become very clear to you. So that is a skill which you have to kind of work on. Now we come to the technique-based questions. The technique-based questions basically ask you about the method of organization or the use of language. You could be asked about literary devices. You could be asked about rhetoric. Rhetoric basically means that you have to kind of state the use of language in the paragraph, which makes the argument more convincing. Another thing to be noted is that learning all these skills also helps you in the essay section, because reading is an important part, reading analysis is an important part of the essay itself. So once you kind of develop the understanding of reading analysis, techniques, and kind of, recognizing arguments, it's definitely going to help you in the essay section as well. Another type of questions that we have are the graph related questions, which kind of test your ability to interpret informational graphics and relate it to the information that has been provided in the passage. So kind of relating the ideas, the argument in the passage to the graph that has been provided. How the graph supports the author's claim, basically. Okay. And the final category of questions are the command of evidence questions. As you could understand by the phrase itself, these questions basically ask you to give evidence for your previously answered questions. Generally, these questions are in a sequence. And for example, if the question preceding the command of evidence question asks you about the central theme of the paragraph, the next question, which is the command of evidence question, will ask you to specifically point out the line, which gave you the evidence, which is the best evidence. You have to know that it should be the best evidence to kind of understand your particular argument, your particular theme which you just took in the opted for in the last session. All right. When discussing the reading section, I also kind of like to discuss a few terms. So we'll take up a few terms. Basically, these terms are asked a lot of times in the questions or are given in the options. And because the students might not be clear on the meanings of these terms since they're slightly technical, you might get confused. So for example, something like expository. Expository means concerned with explaining facts, ideas, etc. Rhetorical, which means relating to the effective use of language. So I just gave you an example of two words. We will discuss these words in detail in class later on. All right. Now the last kind of exercise that I want to do today for the introductory session of in the reading section is taking up a passage and understanding how we can kind of use all the knowledge which we just gathered and how we can now see and classify the questions on the basis of the categories which I just mentioned. So we'll go through this passage. Certain things to be kept in mind while analyzing a particular passage are that you have to pay special attention to the introductory paragraph before it, because it kind of gives you an entry point into understanding what the passage is going to be about. So here I've taken a very small, almost an abstract, to just kind of make you understand literary analysis, like reading analysis. So you have to pay special attention to the first line itself, because it's again an entry point to the argument. So here we see the author says that certain qualities common to the sonnet should be noted. So in the first line itself, he's made clear that we're talking about qualities of a sonnet. Sonnet being a poetic form. Its definite restrictions make it a challenge to the artistry of the poet and call for the technical skills at the poet's command. If you see, like the author is kind of taking claims against it and trying to kind of show how that particular restriction makes the literary form, the sonnet, even better for as a literary form, right? Even better for abstract kind of, bringing out the creativity of the poet. All right, the more or less set rhyme patterns occurring regularly within the short space of 14 lines afford a pleasant effect on the ear and can truly create musical effects. So again, he's doing the same thing. He's kind of talking about the restrictive rhyme scheme. And here we see that he's talking about the use of this restrictive rhyme scheme, that even though the rhyme scheme is restrictive, it's just 14 lines, you also have to keep in mind that this particular rhyme scheme gives it a musical kind of effect. Then he talks about rigidity. The rigidity of the form precludes too great economy or too great prodigality of words. So the rigidity kind of leads to prodigality and economy of words. Emphasis is placed on exactness, perfection of expression. The brevity of the form favors concentrated expression of ideas or passion. So there are certain things which we can figure out once we read this passage. First of all, the author is completely aware. There's a scholastic tone. There is certain, he's not talking like a common man who does not have knowledge of the subject, which is literature and poetry over here. We can see that he's clearly aware of the technicalities of the form of the genre. So we have an idea of the tone. The tone here is also kind of, he's kind of trying to defend the genre almost. Like he's taking the limitations and he's trying to show you how those limitations actually help in development of the creativity, help in development of creating musical effects. All right, so keeping all that in mind, let's have a look at the questions now. The first question says, the author's primary purpose is to. So here, clearly, this is a question which is asking you about the central theme, the primary purpose. The primary purpose and the central theme are somewhat related. They're not the same, but yes, they are related. So we'll go by elimination method here. Let's see the first option. The first option says contrast different types of sonnets. So clearly there are no other types of sonnets mentioned in this paragraph. So we can easily eliminate option A. The second option is criticize the limitations of the sonnet. So if we read the paragraph carefully, he is kind of taking up the criticism, but he's converting it into something which enables the form to function as a literary form. So clearly criticizing the limitations of the sonnet can be eliminated here. Another thing to be noted is criticize does not mean, a lot of students think that criticize actually means that you're kind of discussing the cons of the particular subject, but it actually means that you're analyzing the subject. It means that you're taking both pros and cons in mind. All right, the third option is identify the characteristics of the sonnet. So this option, as we had paid special attention to the first line, I'll just go back to the first line. The first line says certain qualities common to the sonnet should be noted. So clearly we can, if you had paid attention to the first line, you wouldn't be confused and you can clearly see that C is the right answer. Let's still look at D. Explain the sonnet's loss of popularity as a literary form. He has not talked about loss of popularity as a literary form, so we can eliminate this option as well. The second question is a vocabulary in context question. As used in line 4, afford most nearly means. So what I like to suggest students in this particular type of questions is that don't pay attention to the options yet. Just go to the line, the fourth line, the line mentioned, and just try to kind of imagine a blank over here. Okay, so kind of, try to identify your own meaning. So the more or less set rhyme patterns occurring regularly within the short space of 14 lines afford a pleasant effect on the ear of the reader and can create truly magical effects, musical effects. So we understand that afford here kind of is somewhat around the lines of gives or provide. So now let's check the options. The options, yeah, option D does have provide. So this way you can actually double check your answers and you don't have to waste time, going through all the options and getting confused. Let's now look at the final question. The author's attitude towards sonnet form can best be described as we had already kept in mind the tone of the passage and the position of the author in the passage, it is not very difficult to kind of pinpoint that D, scholarly appreciation, is the right answer. I'll come to it just in a moment. Let's see the other options as well. Amused toleration. He's not merely tolerating it. Grudging admiration. There is admiration, but there are no feelings of grudging. There's no grudging tone that is used. Strong disapprobation. He's not really using disapprobation here. And scholarly appreciation, since, like I told you, he's talking like a person, you know that he knows his subject, you know that he knows the form. So we can clearly go for D, scholarly appreciation.